wind up here as
Have I made everybody mad enough?
No!
I'll read a couple of
I
things
can get
right
a lot
before we
mad.
get out of here. Did we talk about it all? Not that we have to or anything, but
We
why
should
not?
touch on anything else.
It's interesting that this is Ricky Gervais.
Okay, let's hear
He
it.
says on Twitter, he had 129. So I don't really understand Twitter. I've had one for a decade. I've used it a few dozen times. I still don't understand it. But he's got 129,000 likes on this, I guess, and tens of thousands of retweets. He says, it's interesting. Now, Ricky Gervais, you know who he is? He's the guy who created The Office, the UK version.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And he's an executive producer, I think, on The Americans. So, he says, it's interesting that, and he's a far left liberal.
Tell us what he said.
He's a real liberal. Is the cheese working yet?
Come on, do it!
Get
it out! Go for it!
Ricky's a guy about 5'10" with sandy brown hair, and what he said when
The battery's going dead. Here we
Oh
go.
my God!
Ricky said, it's interesting that people who believe that throwing a milkshake in someone's face shouldn't be considered assault are often the same people who believe that saying things should be.
Oh yeah.
Boom!
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
guy lives in communist Island. He gets it.
And you know where they get this from. We have been taught in our public universities largely by the professors that it is justifiable to punch a Nazi. Now, they've let that mantra go unchecked. The problem is, they let the Antifa folks decide who's a Nazi.
The problem is, going back to this Martha, the leftist dialectic, it's pure emotion.
Right.
Wrapped into something that could appear to the untrained eye to be reason or words that have objective meanings.
What this inanimate object has done to some unnamed group.
You made me to feel.
Yeah.
Yes, I was made to feel.
Can someone make you feel an emotion? Well, no. You decide.
Chose to have that.
Right.
And so the problem is that they live and die by imprecision and making stuff up and just living on pure frontal lobeless emotion. Your frontal lobe regulates your emotions and your decision making, your strategy. It's as if they don't have that. And the words are meaningless, the strategy is meaningless, and it's all about how they feel. And so because of that, you've deputized millions of people to go out and feel who is a Nazi and hit him over the head with a pipe bender and kill him. And oftentimes, they're killing people or maiming people or forever damaging people that
Would you get your foot off his head?
Well, Martha!
And here's the thing, is that in order to live in a civil society, we have a duty to put up with people we don't like, with
absolutely
with ideas that we don't like.
Yeah. What is leftism? It's the eternal protest against things I don't like, and everything I do like should be a right. Everything I don't like is literal fascism.
right yeah
It doesn't matter what it is or if that's logical or not.
Most of what's called bullying today is just heckling.
Yeah.
Bullying implies a powerful force or a huge advantage over. Bullying is
there's actually physical force being used.
And the irony escapes them that they're the ones primarily doing the real bullying.
Right,
correct. And the coercion.
But really, much of what's being called bullying and being punished as bullying isn't even bullying by even a mildest term. It's just somebody heckling you.
They would consider us bullying each other on the show.
Well, and the way that they discuss it, though, is it's not like an individual gets bullied, it's groups that get bullied. So now they want to have protection for group rights.
That's interesting because it's always been a trick of the left, is they will claim to defend some group that can't speak for itself.
Right.
You know?
While insulting that group.
It's beauty because it sets up a straw man.
Right. Back in the 80s, I remember the left was all about supporting the Sandinista government in Nicaragua.
Yeah, the communists.
Yeah,
Shocker.
and, and trying to defund the Contras and everything. And then, what do you know? They had an election in Nicaragua, and the people threw out the Sandinistas, and all of a sudden it's like the left was trying to defend some people that didn't want their help.
Yeah.
Right. Well, ironically, they end up doing what they're claiming they're opposing. They engage in this kind of racism by saying, you know, women, you're not strong enough. You need some man to save you.
Yes.
A liberal man. Listen, black minorities.
Yes.
You need a white liberal to save you.
Yeah.
They're the Joe Bidens. They're all Joe Biden. Oh, Barack Obama, it's a storybook. We've got an articulate, clean, intelligent guy. Joe Biden said this. It's a storybook. It's a fantasy. We've never had a black guy like this before.
Anyway,
And so Joe Biden
Unicorn.
has to, a unicorn. He's got to go in and he's got to do it for the dumb, helpless blacks. And so they actually engage in this kind of racism or sexism by saying this group can't stand up for itself. And really, it's brilliant in the sense of they get the political power, they have no responsibility, they don't ever have to produce a good outcome, and well, I lost my train of thought. I'll come back.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Clarence Thomas is one of the quotes for the ages. When at his confirmation hearing, they drug out all this so-called, sexual harassment with Anita Hill and everything. He finally had a chance to answer it. And he stares down. It was Joe Biden was chairman back then of that, Senator Biden, and all those people, and he said, what this is a high-tech lynching of an uppity black who deigns to think for themselves.
Right.
And that Clarence Thomas threatened liberalism way more than anybody else of lighter colored skin.
Right.
Because he thought for himself.
And and they conveniently forget about his existence.
Yeah.
Right? And there are no conservative. Well, what are you fighting against your own interests? What are my interests? They assume that your interests are the same as people who look sort of like you.
Yeah.
How racist is that? When they say, why are you voting against your interests? Well, wait a minute. Do you know anything about me? What are my interests?
This was
They
Martha's,
assume to know them just because you look a certain way.
this was Martha's point
left
to
is
me,
crazy.
was that she's so much different than me, but she knows how I think, but she knows I can't know how other people think because I'm not like them.
Yeah, and
So
she's
she's like an
condescending.
oracle.
And then she's condescending to
yeah.
psychoanalyze what's wrong with you.
Well, that was the point that I dropped the Sandinistas and the left trying to protect these underclasses. It works great psychologically.
Yeah.
And for people that don't want to think for themselves, people that are too lazy to, or people that just can't, they just are not very clever. They don't have the aptitude. It appears that you are doing what we all like to see, standing up for someone that can't, the less fortunate. You are the person coming in, sitting up to the mugger, right? And you're beating them. It's the MMA boxer beating the mess out of a would-be rapist.
Right.
They assume that position psychologically in the eyes of the uninformed, low information voters.
Yeah.
And when they don't ever have any efficacy there.
Yeah, and that's what, and I'm going to repeat my, I dug a hole for myself last week. I'm going to do it again. I would tell you, I would much rather have 1,000 neighbors in my part of town who are from most of Latin America, as we call it, than I would people who are from, say, Eastern Europe. Because the people of Latin America are very much...
Why are you against your own interests? Why are you against other white people?
I remember this last week.
Right! Because the rugged individualism of a person from a less developed country where the government doesn't do as much for them is more my, philosophical neighbor.
They're more
than
self-sufficient
somebody who comes
than-
from a socialist country.
Who is my brother and sister?
Well, when
mother
you
and
stop
father?
and think about it, they
Sure
are
do.
more neighborly.
Absolutely.
What you're describing, because what you're describing is somebody who would come in with a socialist, which I keep saying is a tyrannical mindset.
Yeah.
Who wants to rule over you somehow or have somebody do it. Versus a guy who wants to just be left alone and will leave you alone and just get along.
I'll go one further than what you said, David Van, and that is,
I think that's what you're really trying to say.
I don't really care about the composition of neighbor, and I guess, and I know you don't either. The whole point of what I think you're saying is this kind of people group is more likely to agree with liberty.
It does. To me,
Because
color
of the
their
cultural
skin
differences.
is nothing. It's about who can I live with, who respects my vision for what America should be, what the constitutional vision for America should be.
Right.
And that's what I'm getting at. I'll take Moses and the children of Israel coming out of
We're picking a
Egypt.
soccer team here.
Coming out of
Like
Egypt.
Moses and
Fantasy football night, draft night. But anyway, getting the children of Israel, the tribes of Israel, out of Egypt wasn't nearly as much of a problem for him as getting the mentality of slavery out of those tribes. because they
just wanted to go back to
complained
Egypt.
and wanted somebody
Back to
else to
slavery.
do for them. Yes, it's when you get a person out of a socialist country and you get them into a place where you want people to be individualists, to be, have liberty, have freedom, and that getting that mentality out of them. I mean, I had somebody working for me, a young woman, is actually my daughter's roommate 1 year, and she's from Ireland. Well, she's American, but was raised in Ireland.
Irish American.
Yeah. And so, and it was during the 2016 election, and, and I said, well, you going to vote for Trump? She says, no. And I said, really?
Irish.
And I said, well, who do you like? She said, oh, I was a big Bernie Sanders supporter. And she's a daughter of a missionary, very devout Christian, okay? Her mindset growing up, she grew up in a socialist country.
Right.
To her, what Bernie says makes sense because that's all she's ever known.
Right. Seems comfortable.
And she comes back to the United States, just before finishing high school, and she still has that socialism mindset.
Right.
That's what I said. I don't like Scandinavian immigration to America because they're very far leftist.
I mean,
I do not want them voting here.
What Bernie Sanders is saying...
You're not racist at all.
No. Yeah.
Is the same. Bernie Sanders has been saying the same thing's been said since Queen Elizabeth in 1602. So yeah, after a while, it's going to feel pretty comfortable. Yeah. It's just the poor tax, feed the poor. The whole welfare thing started in 1602 with that's where that all started. Hey, we're getting ready to get out of here, folks. I just want to remind you that groups cannot suffer consequences. Only individuals suffer consequences. Nobody gets to pick their group. The group picks the individual and kicks you out if you don't belong any longer. I'm Tom McKay with 3D Politics. David D'Ambroso, David Oldham, and David Van. Any last parting shots?
Yes. Groups don't go to heaven. People do.
Oh.
Hey, it's going to be the 4th. It's 4th of July.
Oh, yeah.
Thursday.
Independence Day.
Independence Day.
Do something independently.
Be rugged. Be an individual. Be independent.
Go to public school.
And celebrate the spirit behind it.
Yeah.
Celebrate the
Yeah.
true spirit of independence.
Cause trouble.
Thanks to the American
Start a
Founding
rebellion.
Fathers for allowing this stuff here to happen. Hey, we'll see you next week on 3D Politics, kids.
All right.